The fourth chapter of our journey along the coastline leads us to the southeast of Brazil and the coast of the Espirito Santo state, Rio de Janeiro, and finally Sao Paulo. Fabio, a surfing instructor and environmentalist, will give us a surfing lesson on the Manguinhos beach. In Rio, the Corcovado cable car has given Jorge the architect some ideas on how to open up the favelas. And he has also designed the more salubrious housing in the favela where Paulo lives. Inside the mythical Maracana stadium, its former keeper, Sil Calais, will attend his very first football match. In Paraty, a colonial marvel, Luis sings the praises of the Caiçara culture. On the Costa Verde, boats are hollowed out from trunks themselves, where Renato is the expert and defender of this maritime tradition. Finally, in Iabea, the small community of Bonete wants to protect its peace and quiet at any cost. Our first stop takes us to the state of Espirito Santo, where we follow the coastline from Itaúnas to Piuma, passing through Manguinhos. Just by the border with the state of Bahia, the Itaúnas Natural Park protects some 40 kilometers of unspoiled shores. On either side of its river that bears the same name, the Itaúnas Park protects various important ecosystems, which coexist and interpenetrate each other. The Restinga, a vegetation of medium-sized trees and shrubs, typical of some of Brazil's coasts. The coastal forest, taller and thicker, a refuge for animals from protected species. And the mangrove. Its presence guarantees the biological diversity of Itaúnas's small estuary and provides the fisherman with a plentiful fishing resource. The coast preservation is becoming increasingly important in Brazil. From this concern, numerous initiatives have been born, like that of Fabio on the Manguinhos beach.
I respect nature, I respect man, and I respect this relationship with the sea, this well-being that we get from the sea. Brazil has a huge, magnificent coast, and we must protect it. If we're not careful, we run the risk of losing something that's value is priceless.
With his NGO Domínio Corporal, Fabio has created a surfing school that's unlike any other. His teaching is inspired by a holistic, even global vision of this sport, in connection with the nature that surrounds it.
We're developing a social project that made its debut in 2005. The difference with this project is that it offers more than a physical activity. It teaches you about the environment, it helps with job hunting, it's a way of raising awareness amongst people who use the beach. And through these activities, we can also create jobs.
The project Nativos Ativos, which literally means active natives, aims to make surfing available to all, whilst allowing those taking part to make a connection with the sea and to blossom as an individual. A bet that's paid off in a somewhat deprived area.
We need to face up to a large number of problems. Government policies in Brazil don't facilitate this type of action. We're motivated by the results of our action. When you see a child who is shy, who has coordination problems, and they begin to open up to others and expand their circle of friends, that's what's most rewarding. That child's smile makes us want to carry on.
After the pleasures of surfing comes ecological and public-spirited gardening.
Here we are again with Hello. Hi, Hello.
Hi, Fabio.
We're going to carry on with the work that we've begun. This is Hello. She helps us with this replanting initiative that we have started here.
Growing in sandy and therefore poor quality soil, the vegetation of the coastal Restinga is made up of a range of herbaceous plants with a very specific role.
E aí, Do you remember what it was like before?
It was full of cars. And when I used to come here on my bike, I could hardly get through.
Before there was a road that ran along the beach. Do you remember, Marcella? There was a lot of traffic all along the beach. And little by little, we came to realise the importance of replanting the Restinga in this zone.
If the Restinga is here, the beach sand can't pass through to the other side. And the sea doesn't have so much force as well, because the Restinga prevents it.
Amongst the members of public that Fabio welcomes in his school are young Indians from the Tupiniquim tribe, who live nearby the Manguinhos. Today, this small group is taking part in its first lesson.
You don't usually find Indian villages next to the sea. The Tupiniquim Indians who lived on the coast were the first to be decimated. There aren't any traces of this culture left. You don't find any indigenous culture on the coast because of this massacre. That's part of our history. It is important for them to preserve their culture.
Originally populating the southern coasts of Bahia and Espirito Santo, the Tupiniquim were amongst the first Indians encountered by the Portuguese when they came ashore in Brazil. They number no more than a few thousand today. For Fabio, bringing people to the ocean and teaching them to surf was more like a destiny.
It's a dream, a way of living. I've got a strange story to tell you. When I was a child, one of the doctors that I went to see with my allergy problems said to my father, "Your son has to go to the sea." And he didn't know that with that he was predicting my future. Because my relationship with the sea is undeniable. And I take a great pleasure in offering this contact with nature to other people.
At the end of the Manguinhos beach, the landscape changes radically. The peninsula of Tubarão is home to one of the largest iron ore exporting ports in the world. More than 100 million tons were shipped out in 2012. The port of Tubarão is situated on the territory of Vitória, the state's capital. With neighbouring Vila Velha, it forms an urban area of more than 1.5 million inhabitants. 100 kilometres further south, Piumã is often nicknamed the City of Shells because its beaches are covered in them. It has given rise to a typical craft industry and busy workshops that are at the foot of the famous Agar mountain. Its 343 metres form one of the tallest navigation landmarks in the whole of the Brazilian southeast coast. Next destination on our coastal journey, the state of Rio de Janeiro and its colourful capital of the same name, Rio. The first rocky landscape of the Brazilian coastline can be seen off the coast of the seaside resort of Arraial do Cabo. Located in the hollow of the granite headlines, which enclose the vast lagoon of Araruama, Arraial has built itself a reputation as the capital of scuba diving. Privileged beaches extend across the hollow of the multiple indentations of this mineral paradise, bathing in a turquoise sea and unbelievably crystal clear waters. The Praia do Farol on the island of Cabo Frio is often riding high at the top of the rankings of the most beautiful beaches in Brazil. If the beaches and bays of the Costa do Sol are small natural gemstones, the jewel in the crown of Brazilian tourism and the incarnation of all the country's contradictions can be found further east, at the entrance to the Bay of Guanabara. Welcome to Rio. Its main showcase, Copacabana, is certainly one of the most filmed and photographed beaches on the planet. Directly above what has been nicknamed the Princesinha do Mar, the Little Princess of the Sea, the favelas of Chapéu, Mangueira and Babylonia have colonized the mountainous areas. Copacabana's neighbor, Ipanema, wants to be the showcase of a relaxed and radiant Rio. This chic district is bordered on its city side by the Rodrigo de Freitas Lake, a vast area of salt water that links to the ocean. Perched on the summit of the Corcovado, one of the many granite peaks that characterize the city's geography, Christ the Redeemer dominates this breathtaking view. Erected in 1931 and the work of French sculptor Paul Ladowski, the statue reaches an altitude of more than 700 meters, and with it, the heart of Tijuca, the largest urban forest in the world. A splendor that rubs shoulders with a less idyllic reality.
The right to beauty is a fundamental right, like any other right.
This right is at the heart of urban architect Jorge's work.
Historically, it was 20 years ago that we started to talk about the official and unofficial city, like two parts of a divided city. Do you make these?
No, it's my wife who makes them. The idea came from the cable cars and we started to create souvenirs.
Located in the north of Rio, the Alemão complex is made up of a dozen favelas, today linked to the official city by a cable car.
An urbanization project isn't just about making roads and a system of infrastructures. You also have to consider the social fabric, how to make an area's assets work. That is the fundamental question. The beauty of popular architecture is represented by grouping houses together in a unit, which in the end is an almost organic organization.
Since moving to Rio in 1978, Argentinian Jorge has had a passion for resolving the city's social problematics. He was behind this transport system, which has transformed the lives of the 150,000 inhabitants of the Alemão complex.
For those who lived on the other side of the hill and wanted to visit a friend, it took them forever to get there through a maze of little streets. You were constantly going up one street and down another. So in the end, they hardly ever bothered doing it. Today, people visit each other a lot more. Little by little, the cable car has created a system of networks and a permeability between the inside and the outside, between the official and the unofficial, between the favela and, in the end, between the favela and the city itself. Today, the Alemão complex is recognized as a part of the city of Rio.
Although the phenomenon of favelas is not exclusive to the city of Rio, on the other hand, it is particularly significant. You only have to look at the Carioca landscape to see the huge amount of shanty towns and the weight of their population. The specificity of Rio is attached to this inextricable web between the official city and the favelas. The former occupies the lower areas. The latter cling to the slopes of the mountains just above. Rocinha is one of the most populated favelas in Brazil, estimated to have more than 100,000 inhabitants. Its location close to privileged districts has accelerated its pacification and the improvement of its town planning. Here again, Jorge has left his mark, through a government rehabilitation program that was inaugurated in 2010.
We are in Rocinha, in the middle of Rocinha, at the heart of the favela. This road didn't exist before. It has become a very important axis of traffic and connection thanks to this program. Here, the inhabitants have been able to obtain a residence. Now they live in better conditions, housing conditions that are more dignified. It's not just about dignity, but about the happiness that a habitable, well thought out, well organized living space brings. In the favelas, there are no spaces to live in, no public places. For example, no spaces where 3 generations can coexist, children, adults and the elderly. In the framework of this project, we have created specific places for this.
Although the groups of houses that Jorge has created contrast sharply with the unofficial architecture of the rest of the favelas, the convivial spaces that were specifically developed for this effect still struggle to find their raison d'être.
Here we are in a space that was meant to become a play area for children and a meeting place for local people. But this area has been invaded by cars. Here, the culture of social and economic progression is still linked to owning a car. What's more, there isn't a collective culture. People need to be taught and learn again how to live together. And that means to share certain things. Share the staircases, share the lighting, share the cleaning and the safety of these spaces.
This afternoon, Jorge is going to meet Paulo, a football instructor in a local NGO, who lives in one of the buildings designed by the architect.
My name is Paulo Sergio Gomez. I'm 43 years old. I was born in Belo Horizonte, in Minas Gerais. My mother separated from my father and we went to live with my grandmother, but my grandmother was an alcoholic. I was placed with a family, but things were very difficult. I had dreams, but I didn't have the conditions to achieve them. So I came to Rio. At the beginning, it was very hard. Watch out for the hole. I never gave up. I knew that I needed to study. I had everything planned out. I want to become somebody, and I gave it my all. I worked in the Caissara football club for 13 years. When I left that job, I wanted to buy myself a little house. I found a house in the Valão district.
Paulo takes us to his old house.
Here's the kitchen. As you can see, there's a big difference. The bathroom. We lived in this house for 10 years, with all the problems. The lack of light, the fear when it rained, because the open sewer ran just in front of the house, carrying stones along with it, making a lot of noise. I was frightened to death. You can't even imagine how much. With a small child in the house, there was a lot of rubbish, rats. It was gloomy everywhere. I never invited anyone here because I was ashamed. I was scared. The smell of the sewers, the rain. You have no idea what it's like when it rains. I ask myself how people end up living here. They accept these conditions because they don't have a choice, not because they want to. It's amazing. Sometimes I sit here and I cry. I get the shivers. It's so amazing. I didn't have a house. I couldn't have any friends. My children are growing up here. It's a dream that has come true. Honestly, everything has changed, starting with me. I feel like I'm younger. I can say that I am happy. I feel like a citizen of my city. As a joke, I say that when I go to the beach, I'm going to get a tan on my teeth and the soles of my feet. I go there with my children. We're a 10-minute walk away from one of Rio's most beautiful beaches, São Conrado. Here we're close to everything. Really, I don't need anything else, just to be and to carry on being happy.
Over 30% of the population, that's to say around 2 million people, live in a shantytown in Rio. There are more than 1,000 favelas, where living conditions remain very precarious. The most popular Brazilian dance was born in the favelas, the Samba. Regina is the chairwoman of Salgueiro, one of the most illustrious schools in the city.
I've been in Samba ever since I was a little girl. Samba means everything to me. It's a great honour, above all as a woman, to run a school as important as a Salgueiro. It's not easy being chairwoman. Everyone loves Salgueiro. Salgueiro brings happiness and love to those who are sad. It makes them leave their houses. It's like a big family.
The Samba schools are very popular in Brazil. In the most prestigious schools, like Salgueiro, competition is fierce to become the girl that leads the dance during the festivities. Because the school's objective is to put on a show during the carnival. The 12 biggest schools parade along the Sambadrome of Rio. The day of the procession has arrived. With its 70,000 spectators watching, the party is in full swing. Salgueiro, at full capacity with nearly 3,000 people, will attempt to sway the jury with a dazzling parade. Excessively symbolic floats, extravagant costumes, groups of excitable dancers, irresistible rhythms. No effort is spared to win the title of Carnival Champion. Salgueiro will only be runner-up this year. Maybe the Marquês de Sapucaí Sambadrome will see it win its 10th title in 2015. The Mardi Gras Carnival also gives rise to great dances. The most prestigious take place on the famous Sugarloaf Mountain, which is accessed by cable car. Sugarloaf Mountain marks the entrance to the Bay of Guanabara, which laps the runways of the Santos Dumont Airport, situated just under 2 kilometers away from the economic and cultural center of the city. In the heart of the Cinelândia district, Municipal Theatre of Rio de Janeiro considers itself a Brazilian version of the Garnier Opera in Paris. It was built at the beginning of the 20th century. Not far away stands the astonishing São Sebastião Cathedral and the remains of the Lapa Arches, the nickname of the ancient aqueduct from colonial times, which today serves as a bridge for the tramway. Further east, on the cusp of the city's rundown areas, the temple of Brazil's real religion can be found. The Maracana, one of the largest football stadiums in Latin America. Inaugurated at the 1950 Football World Cup, its initial capacity was for 250,000 standing places. In this arena, the most beautiful pages of Brazilian football have been written. The former stadium keeper, Seu Calais, is a living memory of this mythical place.
I am the Maracana, and often the Maracana is me, Calais. When building work began on the Maracana, I was 10 years old. I saw the birth of the Maracana. I came to work at the Maracana just as a public worker. I was in charge of the everyday running of the club. This position was worth more to me than a suitcase full of dollars.
Seu Calais has seen the Maracana transform throughout the years. With an initial capacity of 250,000 standing, the stadium has received a facelift for the occasion of the 2014 World Cup.
Today, on the 24th of November 2013, for the first time, I am entering through gate number 13 of the new Maracana. Today, the Maracana is completely different. Was it worth it? Yes. You have to keep up with the times. Everything evolves, and the Maracana evolves as well. That's how it is. Now we arrive on the pitch. Up there, on the 5th and 6th levels, you had the VIP stands. The Flamengo team supporters were always on this side, and the Fluminense here. It brings back so many things. Maracana has always been visited by many well-known figures like Queen Elizabeth, who came to Brazil, Frank Sinatra, Pope John Paul II. I didn't participate in the events. I was working on those days. I got used to this situation. I adapted.
For the first time, Seu Calais is going to attend a football match in the Maracana Stadium.
I'm going to live the emotion of this moment. I'm from Rio. I'm from Brazil. Football, the carnival, the beaches, they're in our blood.
Today, the Maracana can hold just over 80,000 people. Even though throughout its existence it will have welcomed at least 2 World Cup finals, the stadium remains, first and foremost, the ground for competitive matches between the local teams. Fluminense, Flamengo, Botafogo and others Vasco da Gama. Meetings that are passionately followed by the supporters, even though the reopening of the stadium in 2013 was accompanied by a hike in ticket prices. An evolution that doesn't prevent Seu Calais from continuing to worship his Maracana.
The Maracana will always be the Maracana. From yesterday, today, and for tomorrow. The Maracana has been my life. It was my work that allowed me to feed my family. Life is a never-ending routine. Here, it was my home, Calais, Maracana.
We leave Rio, wonderful city as named by the Brazilian poet Coelho Neto, under the protection of the Christ of the Corcovado mountain. A landscape between the sea and the mountains, marked out and protected by UNESCO due to its exceptional beauty. A beauty that extends into the coastal forests of its mountain ranges, as well as in the appealing platitude of its restingas in the Bay of Sepetiba. For the third stage of our journey, we set off to discover the treasures of the stunning Costa Verde, situated on the coasts of the states of Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. The Costa Verde, or Green Coast, owes its name to the presence of large areas of Mata Atlantic, the most important Atlantic forest on its coast. This further covers the mountains of the Serra do Mar, a long mountain range that runs parallel to the ocean, in which the mountains directly descend in certain places. The island of Ilha Grande, off the coast of Angra dos Reis, is one of the Costa Verde's paradises and remains totally protected as a state natural park. A territory of sumptuous landscapes that shelter a traditional and rich culture, that of the Caiçara.
Venho de campos e matas, terra verde, fértil e farta.
At the extreme south of the state of Rio, the town of Paraty still bears witness to the charm of Portuguese colonial architecture.
Juca acordando cedo, visitando o cerco e manezinho saindo pra tirar taquara.
The musician Luis Perequer sings about the Caiçara culture, the culture of the coastal populations.
Paraty is a town that is connected to the sea. Our culture is the Caiçara culture. The Caiçara is a man who farms and who fishes. His fishing sustains him. His family farm is around his house. The region has been a very large banana and flour producer, plus fishing. These three elements show that the Caiçara is a real European African Indian. We have to fight to protect this culture so that it doesn't disappear. Why? Because there are always transformations, but the core of our culture doesn't change. With the NGO Silo Cultural, we have created what we call the cultural convoy of Paraty, what goes to Rio and São Paulo. It's a way to mix traditional groups, which are the source of our inspiration, with the work of younger people arriving on the art scene.
Luis and his wife Vanda, who is choreographer, go to see Lucio Cruz, one of the most renowned artists of the city. He is above all a master in creating papier-mâché masks and paintings, a speciality of Paraty.
How's it going?
Good. Yes, it's coming along.
So, where are we with the preparations for the convoy?
I really like this picture.
It depicts the inhabitants of Paraty, this culture of religiosity. The ciandeiros also play during the Folia, which is the festival of the Holy Trinity. The musicians who play the cirandas in Paraty accompany the folias, the processions, the festivals.
In Paraty's House of Culture, Luis and Vanda, accompanied by the town's traditional ciandeiros group, meet with some other dancers for a ciranda demonstration, a very well-known dance in the region.
A ciranda me pediu com todo o seu coração, me pediu com todo o seu coração. Menina dança direito no meio desse salão. Com respeito, menina dança direito, balanceia na ciranda, eu quero balancear. Na ciranda eu quero balancear.
The ciranda, a dance that originates from Pernambuco and that is practiced across Brazil, is a dance that is participative, open to all those who wish to enter into the circle of dancers, the steps being relatively simple.
The cultural identity of Paraty begins with the artists who transformed it into a refuge. It was the beginning of the dictatorship in 1964. And this refuge took place with the arrival of the hippie movement. Paraty became the center of artistic experimentation. And these experiments integrated aspects of the local culture. My dream is that people pay more attention to traditions, and that the people who live here, the artists, aren't just here for the entertainment of the tourists. I would like them to be recognized for their work and for the government policies to move towards professionalizing these artists.
Thanks to passionate ambassadors like Luis, the Caiçara culture still has many fine days to come in Paraty, even if the growth of tourism might mean that it loses its soul a little. Leaving Paraty behind us, we carry on with our journey along the Costa Verde, but this time in the state of Sao Paulo, the most densely populated state in the country. At Ubatuba, we are still far removed from the enormity of the state's capital. Enclosed in its Atlantic forest setting, which clings to the Serra do Mar, this fashionable seaside resort remains preserved. However, there is a great deal of interest from real estate, and here as well, the Caiçara culture is resisting. The regional nautical heritage is distinguished by a vessel that is totally original. The canoas caiçaras, a type of wooden boat hollowed from the trunks of trees. In the region, Renato is the specialist, a Caiçara carpenter, all the way through to his wooden scissors.
I've been making canoas since I was 8 years old. I always went fishing with my father. The canoa, it's my whole childhood. My passion for the canoa came from trying to make it. Along the way, I managed to perfect it. Today, I make canoas in every size, depending on the wood I have available.
Renato works by instinct, according to the wood he finds.
Here, there's not very much to be modified. It's a lovely piece. I looked at it and I decided to make a seat. I found this on the road. The highways manager called me to help them to take it away. I helped them and I salvaged the wood. I look at the piece of wood and I see what I can do with it straight away. It's the same for the canoa. Here you have works of art. Rustic furniture, benches, tables, chairs, sculptures. We make what people ask us to make.
The supply of raw material remains a problem for Renato. The deforestation of the coastal areas by large forestry companies has on the one hand reduced the wood resources. On the other hand, it has also subjected manufacturers and craftsmen to the same laws without any distinctions. The latter have more and more difficulties in finding supplies, faced with rules that don't allow any exceptions. But Renato gets by with his love for the canoa.
The greatest treasure that a Caiçara can have, if he lives by the beach with access to a fishing zone, is a Caiçara canoa. If he likes to fish with a canoa, a paddle, a net and a line, he can fish for himself and live off his fishing without any problem. Today I go out in my canoa. I have a good balance. I take part in races sometimes, but above all, I make canoas as I want them. Faster, slower, being able to take a heavier load, lower, deeper. This stick is for the bow. That one is for the stern.
agora aqui a canoa tá
Now the
ligada.
canoa is aligned.
Opa.
Stern, center, and bow.
Até uma criança
A
consegue
child
brincar
can
nela.
play in this canoa.
Mesma forma que eu estou construindo essa canoa.
I can make a little
pequena,
canoa
dá
just
pra
as well as a
construir
big
uma grande
one.
de qualquer tamanho. De
1
metro,
meter, 10
10
meters,
metros,
20
20
meters,
dependendo da
depending on the
madeira.
wood.
Construindo a
The canoa shouldn't be left
canoa,
outside
pra
if
ela
you
ter
want it to last for a long
Para
time.
aguentar no tempo, ela não pode ficar do jeito que ela está aqui.
Rich people come and build whatever they want on the beach. But the Caiçara, he doesn't have the right to build a shelter there, even a mud brick one. The Caiçara is treated like a criminal. But he's not committing any crime. He needs wood to make a canoa, a pestle for his flour. He plants his rice, his manioc, and he fishes to eat and to make his living.
E o Caiçara tem
The Caiçara has his field of manioc, the sea to fish in, beans, rice, some chickens, palm hearts.
palmito para guardar dinheiro.
He's going to put money aside? To do what?
Meu pai tem uma riqueza.
My
minha mãe
father
tem
and
uma
my mother
riqueza
have a wealth on
incalculável
this
naquela
beach that
praia.
is priceless.
Que não tem preço, que já chegou gente
This
querendo
land
comprar,
doesn't
mas
have a
ninguém
price.
vende.
People wanted to buy it, but they were refused. Rich people came with their money and wanted to buy
O Caiçara
everything.
que é burro,
Some Caiçaras are fools.
vende a troco de banana.
They
Já
sell their
aconteceu
land for a
em
pittance.
várias praias aqui do
It's
nosso
already
litoral.
happened on several beaches of our coast.
Então a nossa riqueza tá na onde a gente mora.
Our wealth is our land. That's how it is.
Palavras de Caiçara.
The word of a Caiçara who loves his art.
Canoa.
Canoa.
Eu já consegui
I've
realizar
already
todos os
realized
sonhos.
my dreams.
Que
I want this
continuasse
tradition
a
to live
tradição,
on.
que não morresse,
I don't want it to
nascesse
die.
outro
I want
danadinho
someone as
que
mad
viesse,
as me to be born,
começasse
for
a
him to
construir
make
canoa
Caiçaras
Caiçara e não
canoas.
Paradises of white sand and crystal clear waters, set in a luxurious and intact vegetation, the beaches of Costa Verde attract more and more Paulistas, the inhabitants of Sao Paulo, in need of pure air and tranquility. Santos, situated 80 kilometers away from the megacity, is their closest coastal escape, and the climax of a concrete Costa Verde that is much less idyllic. Not content with exhibiting an urban area of 1.5 million inhabitants, Santos is also the largest container port in Brazil and the whole of the South American continent. "100 kilometers further east, the archipelago of Ilha Bela is a total contrast to this massively developed Brazil. On São Sebastião, the largest island, the community of Bonete has put up resistance to the pressures of these developments. André is the spearhead of this resistance.
Bonete is an exception. It's said to be one of the last gems of our coast that is still preserved.
The inhabitants of Ilha Bela live voluntarily in the margins of this mass development that has hit other coastal areas. Coastal fishing, craftsmanship, and more recently, ecological tourism are the main activities here.
I've grown up in Ilha Bela. I've always liked this peaceful and simple way of life. I've also lived in Ilha Castellanos, a magnificent beach, in another traditional community, Traditionele. When I arrived here, I loved this way of life. The place has changed a bit, but it's been very well preserved. The people here are in good health, they have an excellent diet, they eat fresh fish every day.
I'm ready, Andre.
Valentina is awake. She's impatient.
We're going to see my father. He's repairing a net.
President of the Association for the Protection of Bonete, Andre lives in a small family-run posada, a guest house right next to the beach. Bonete's community is made up of just under 250 people, for the main part descended from the first inhabitants. Just like his father-in-law, Seu Benedito, Andre worries about the future of the region's fish resources.
When will the net be ready? Have you got the time to repair it one of these days?
In the next couple of weeks, it'll be ready to be cast into the water. First, it needs to be repaired. Today, we noticed that there are a lot less fish. From my father's time, 25 to 30 years ago, the number of fish has gone down by more than 90% in the region. It's because of these industrial fishing boats that come from outside. They come to our region and take our fish. Today, there's not enough fish for the Caiçara who lives on Bonete Beach.
Here in Bonete, we are isolated. But we prefer to say protected, rather than isolated. The development has not come as far as here. We're fighting to get some basic things to improve our daily lives, but without these inconveniences that development brings. Can I see? Wow, it's wonderful. This hydroelectric power plant was built 14 years ago. It's a mini plant. It drains water from the waterfall. There's no dam. It's always been able to provide electricity for the whole community. Today it's in need of repair. It's very old and it needs to be modernized. With more modern equipment, it could provide even more electricity for everyone. Children's lives here are unbelievable. Children that are 2 or 3 years old can walk all alone without any danger. They play in the river, they surf, they go canoeing, climb in the trees to eat the fruit. It's the life that I've always dreamed of since I was little.
A life that Andre is ready to fight for tooth and nail.
This year we led a large battle. The public authorities had planned a large transformation of our coast, authorizing big real estate investments, condominiums, housing developments, luxury hotels, which would have opened this place up to the world and totally destroyed our Caiçara culture. We don't want what has happened in other beaches of the northern coast to happen to us. Roads have been built and development has arrived. The newcomers have begun to buy the lands of the coast, pushing out the Caiçaras and sending them inwards. Then the Caiçaras have ended up selling their land there as well, moving back a little bit more. Some of them have ended up in a favela. They've become employees of these newcomers, whereas today, the Caiçaras are protagonists of their land. In Bonete, the sea is our front door, our protection. It's the livelihood of many people, fishermen, sailors who work in transport. And it's our happiness. It's possible to find a balance, to have the things that you have in a city, but whilst living in this paradise, without being changed by this runaway development.